Welcome back, everybody, to the home of Jewitt Guitars in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. Also the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. One of the amazing things about being a luthier or building guitars is that there's just a never-ending supply of ideas, things to try out, new things, maybe looking at an old type of vintage model and changing it up a little bit. But there's something about the old vintage guitars that has always intrigued me, and this is one of them. Now, for those of you that don't recognize this guitar right away, what this is based on the Gibson L00, and it was the Nick Lucas model that was very popular in the 20s and 30s. I believe it was introduced in the late 20s and continued on until the 30s. Nick Lucas was a very popular singer and film star in that era. He was about equivalent to a Frank Sinatra. He was very popular. And either Gibson went to him or he went to Gibson and said, I really like your L00 small body, but could you change it up a little bit to suit my playing style? And his playing style was a little bit kind of jazzy and hard to say, but anyways, he wanted a bigger sound out of it. So what Gibson did is they made a really big box. And when I say a big box, this is a very large sound box. It's a full 4 3/4 at the tail end, and it only tapers down to 4 1/4 at the neck. And that's very unusual because normally you have quite a bit of taper on the back. But what this does is gives this smaller body guitar a much bigger sound, which you'll see in just a sec. Now, I didn't make a lot of changes from the original. What I did was I did the body depth, as I mentioned. I have a mahogany neck. I have maple sides and back, and I used some really gorgeous flame maple on this one. This has an Adirondack spruce top or soundboard and the vintage period style sunburst that Gibson would have used, except that I applied it with a spray gun. The early Gibsons were applied by hand. I also have the period correct fire stripe pickguard, and what I also did, and I just had to do it, I used the Nick Lucas style inlays all the way from the top fleur-de-lis down to the 12th frets. And boy, this thing just really is an eye catcher. It sounds good, which we'll talk about in a sec, but I want to talk about a few more things about the appointments and the build on this. I decided to go with open back Waverly tuners on this one. And these are the nickel open back tuners, and they have the white, maybe a little bit kind of an ivoroid looking button on them. But they really tie in with the ivoroid binding that I used on the fretboard, as well as all around the guitar on the front and the back, as you can see there. As I mentioned earlier, it's got the fleur-de-lis inlay here, the Jewitt inlay in matching mother of pearl up here, and the fingerboard, like the original, is rosewood. As I said, it's bound in the same ivoroid as the body is. Coming down here, we have a rosewood bridge, a bone saddle with bone pins and little black dots on it. Now, the spacing at the bridge down here is 2 1/4, which is a good general fingerstyle type of spacing, but it's not so wide that it doesn't take likely to using a pick, which I'll also show. Up here, I have also a standard 1 3/4 inch nut. That's a bone nut, and that's also kind of a standard. So what we've got here is just 1 3/4 here, 2 1/4 down here, and that gives you very nice playability all the way up and down the fretboard. To complement this, I used gold Evo frets, and the gold really ties in nicely with the black ebony that I used for the peghead overlay up here. The top is braced on this one. Now normally I would use Adirondack spruce for bracing because it's very light and stiff, but I decided on this one to use premium old growth Sitka, and that was the customer request on this one. And it's hard to say whether it makes a difference, but overall the sound of this is very responsive. It has some nice, really shiny, not jingly, but very clear bell-like trebles, but it has a big sound at the mid and the bass end. Coming around to the back, as I said before, this is just a beautiful flame maple back, and this is what we call a full body sunburst, meaning the sunburst goes all around from the front to the sides and the back. It's a lot of extra work, but it's really worth it when you get to these types of models. So, with all that being said, explaining about this guitar, let's give it a listen.